How awesome that we have such a nice representation on the call this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. This is our, I don't know, third or fourth HomelessData.com users group meeting. And we intend these meetings for the organizations and regions that we work directly with. Each of you has sort of a unique scope of what we do together. We have data source administrators on the call for people that manage data sources in HomelessData, or typically those are HMIS systems. Some data sources are for whole COCs, and some organizations have their own HMIS systems. So we have a broad mix of people on the call today. There are also regional continuum of care administrators who use an HMIS that they don't administer. So the different types of roles on the call and different types of users that we have using HomelessData just sort of speaks to the flexibility as well as the complexity of the system. So we're going to try and hit on some major points and major features of the platform, talk about some new changes that are getting ready to roll out, and have some conversation. But we can also follow up with you directly on detailed training or an offline conversation if we're not quite able to get to your specific needs on the call today. So this is, I'm sure most of you have seen it, this is the HomelessData webpage, HomelessData.com, where we post a lot of different information, but it's also really the portal into the data management side of things. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. All of you have, oh, I don't know if all of you have logins because I'm not totally sure who's on the call. But if you don't yet, and you should, then we can talk, or talk to the person who forwarded you the email. So this is the home page, and I'm going to actually turn it over to Matt to kind of kick things off and talk about some of the overview of the key benefits of the way that the data is structured in the platform.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. For those that don't know you, my name is Matt Simmons from Simtech Solutions. This is not our first go-around of a HMIS data warehouse. This is actually our third in-house data warehouse system we've built. And the advantages of HomelessData over Agency Dash, for those that were using Agency Dash, are significant. There are some things just to be aware of, some potential gotchas in how we receive data to be reported over. But you know, I think it's important for some of you that might have been having issues with reporting figures or don't understand why we changed something, just to give you a background of why it is the way it is now. So high level, the biggest thing we're trying to accomplish is we want to be able to have a comprehensive view into the data for your region. And in order to do that, we need to have a way to receive the data from the different HMIS systems that could be available to you in a consistent format, and which is the HUD CSV Exchange format, and make it available to be reported over. So the Agency Dash approach is one where if you need a report run, you would send over data for that reporting period and pick, you know, it would be there, you would run the report and be done with it. The next time you wanted a report run, you would go and export the next set of data, run the report, etc. The approach with HomelessData is that if anyone for your region is to refresh the database for that project that you're trying to run a report over, the data is already there sitting and waiting for you. So this home page, the idea why we're putting this information up front is we're showing you, when you log in, what data is available and ready to be reported over. So those green lines represent the duration of time that is covered by the data that's in HomelessData for you. So some of them are pretty extensive, can go years back, and that's why a lot of it's slid way over to the right, because some of the data does go 10 years back. You'll see occasionally a little red gap, a little red line. So what that is showing gaps. And some of you, I click Show Projects with Gaps Only. Why is there no red lines. Well, in actuality, they're just so small, and this is a point to bring up. When you're doing a data refresh, so in this case, what Heidi's hovering over is data from a project in Detroit that ends on September 30, 2016, and then the next data cut that is there, it starts on October 1, 2016. So there is, in actuality, a one-day data gap. And so, to cover that, when you're doing exports from your source system, just be cognizant that we want to make sure that we have the whole piece. So even if you're at a few extra days to the report export or to the data export, it's okay. It's just going to overwrite what we already have in the system. And the other side of it too, when we data export, you might as well get it up until today. Like, get it as fresh as possible. So if you're running a report, maybe you're doing a report that ends in the calendar year. Well, don't just export data up until the end of the year. Export it up until today, because the next report you might run might need something up until the end of February. You already have that data loaded in the system for yourself and for anyone else now, because the last time you loaded it, you did it up until today. So those pieces to cover. Beyond that, we also want to have, for system performance measures, which are the new HUD reports to figure out how well a region's doing in addressing homelessness, we need depth data. We need data to go back all the way back until October 1st, 2012. Now, every time you wanted to run a report, you had to take entire regions worth of data and refresh that. So it's a huge amount of system resources that get consumed, both on your source HMI system and on HomelessData and receiving that data and validating it. So if you can build up the data picture over time, it's less burden and it's quicker for everyone. Now, there are some considerations to be made when you're going to run your reports. One of the key pieces is the idea of the data gaps. So if there is a gap in your data history, and that's why we put it up front, what could happen is you could actually have someone that was exited during that time period, or there was incomplete enrollment that happened during that time period, that wouldn't get picked up by the reports. So we do encourage people to look, especially administrators, look at this home screen, use that filter to show projects with gaps, and then beyond that, going forward, try to get a comprehensive data picture in there. So again, the look back stop date, they call it, as far as the HUD parlance, is October 1, 2012. Now, we're not saying to every region go out and cut, from that date forward for all projects, right now after this webinar is over, because that's going to be taxing on your source systems and on HomelessData. But build it up over time. And if you have a large region that you're doing reports over, consider chunking the data either by project type or maybe doing a year at a time, and just be cognizant of the export end date. So if you did to the end of the fiscal year, the next one start, end of the calendar year, you end on one batch on December 31st, start the next batch on December 31st. Don't start on January 1st. And there is some issues that could come up that we're going to talk through as far as whether or not your vendor has the capacity to let us know on the HomelessData side if a enrollment has been deleted. If your vendor doesn't have that capacity, there's things to be aware of that we'll talk through again. But in general, we're trying to make this easier. One administrator could potentially refresh the data set for everyone in the region without having everyone have to go and take on that responsibility themselves. So keep that in mind. Maybe consider that something as far as roles and responsibilities as you're articulating those. But we're trying to make life easier for everyone and build up that comprehensive data picture, really figure out who's homeless and why.
There was just a question about how much usage fluctuates throughout the day. It's pretty consistent during the day, but unless somebody's doing an enormous set of emergency shelter data using a night-by-night tracking method for years, there really hasn't been any problems with traffic coming in. So I wouldn't worry about, for general imports, when you're doing them, you can do them anytime.
More across a region. And if you're going to do a large data set and it's going to be large, just have consideration to other users because it is a shared resource. The servers themselves, there's only so much bandwidth and power in any hosting. So if you're going to do something that's a really large data set or a really large report run, just give consideration to other people and do it off, what's normal off hours. Typically during the day is when most people are running reports.
It hasn't really been a big issue. So with that, I think the question of who's uploading data, how often, who's running the reports, who's looking at the reports, who's responsible for cleaning up the data and uploading fresh data, all of those questions really come down to your own roles and responsibility within your organization or within your region, and kind of who's doing what. And we're going to get into this a little bit more when we talk about user roles as well. Matan, we are going to get to that question about subsets, and I'm going to show you that. We'll have some questions are coming in, which is fantastic. We are going to also have time at the end for Q&A and make sure we get to everything that we can today. So from here, just a little overview around how that data comes in. So many of you know this already. HomelessData is organized at the data source level, at the organization level, and at a project level as well. So we have this is a demonstration data source. These are the organizations that are in that data source, and then there are also various projects in that data source. Data source right now is typically HMIS systems, but it could be other data as well. As long as it's structured data and we can work with it, it could come into the system. Some organizations could have data from multiple data sources, which we don't have a lot of examples of here, but you can imagine some large organizations like Catholic Charities or Mercy Housing. I don't know if Tabitha, if you're on the call, where you could have a large organization that spans COC regions, maybe it's a national organization even, and you've got that data sitting in local HMIS systems, but as an organization, you want to pull all of that together. You could do that here as well. So as we talk about users in the system, users can have create a bunch of demo users. So users can have access, permission at either an organizational level or at a data source level or even a project level. So if I wanted to give this person access to organizations within my data source, so this is a test data source, and these are a couple of organizations, and then within that you've got projects. So you could give somebody really down to a very specific role at the project level. You could give this person, it's a person who's working only in the APR permanent housing project, you can give them specific access to that project. Or if you have a manager in your region who should have administrative rights to the whole organization, you can do that as well. I'm going to walk through some examples of these in just a moment as well. So I did get some advance permission to show a few people's accounts because I think it's really easiest to look at some real examples of how some users are using it. So Chris, thank you for this. Chris Alexander's on the call, I believe, from Sonoma County. Sonoma County is lovely. It's got one data source for one COC region. Everything is contained. And these are all of the users that are associated with data coming from Sonoma County. I don't know most of these users because Chris does, and he manages his COC and is able to be sort of the first point of contact for the users in his region. Similarly, I want to show how Mark, and thank you also for permission, Mark. Mark is a COC lead on Cape Cod and the islands here in Massachusetts, which is a lovely place to be. And Mark he's got to do all of his own COC reporting, but all of his projects, they are piggybacking on the state's of Massachusetts' HMIS system. So Mark has access to the projects within the COC that he needs without getting into the rest of the state's data. And Mark can be given this access in one of two ways. He could be given to it by the data source administrator for the Massachusetts HMIS system at each specific project level or organization level, or if he has access to that data, or any of you have access to data in HMIS, and you upload it into HomelessData, you then have access to it in HomelessData. So there are a couple of different ways to actually get access to your data. And again, it kind of depends on how you're structured and what's easiest for you, and kind of who's driving the data ship, as it were, and who owns the data and what your relationships are, what your agreements are, both with your data source administrator, your HMIS system, with your COCs, with your organizations. You've got to kind of follow the trail of data and who's in charge, and also who's doing what with it. And again, this comes back to your policies and procedures. I want to show another example of we work with the city of Somerville directly. Lisa, thank you. So Somerville has data on the state system, state's HMIS system, but they also, because they share projects with Cambridge for their COC, Somerville also has to bring in data from the City of Cambridge, which is on a Clarity system, and they also have data from the VOA, which is actually on another data source. It's Service Point data. So we are able to work with Lisa and the Somerville Homeless Coalition to bring in data from multiple sources so that she can do her PIC, PIT, AHAR, etc. We also have a number of users on the call today, a lot of organizations who are not necessarily, your own COCs. You're not necessarily responsible for COC reporting, HICS and PITs and AHARs and such, and you're using HMIS for different purposes. So this is one such organization. And these, again, are all the users associated with this data source that Matan is now overseeing. And it looks like, in this case, all of his users have access to all 14 projects. Again, that's, although some using it more than others. And again, that's how you want to, that's, depending on how you set it up, you can assign people just the projects they're responsible for. If that makes sense. Either you want them to upload data or you want them to run reports. whatever it is, you can either assign them permission for that one project, or you say to them, you go ahead and upload it, and then you can have oversight over everything. I'm now going to show reports, but I'm wondering if before we flip over to reports and get into some of the good stuff that's coming, if there are any questions right now about kind of user roles and user management, how the data comes in. You can pause here for that. No one's muted right now. John LaBella is asking if HUD is going to, I didn't get the whole question, it kind of broke up.
I can see it.
Okay.
John's saying, is it your perception that HUD will be forcing all HMI systems into a data warehouse in the future, even across state lines? No, John, that's not our perception. I think there are definitely advantages to what's referred to as a service-oriented architecture, which allows communities to break down their homelessness response framework into a front-end case management system, tools for reporting, which includes a data warehouse, the ability to take non-HMI data in, so you may have Medicaid, Medicare data, you may have data from other systems of care, detox, legal services, et cetera. So definitely advantages of that, but what we're seeing from HUD isn't pushing a particular approach of data warehousing.
Let's have some data uploads from ETO that never... can you read this?
Yes, I can. So Matan's saying, I've sometimes had data uploads from ETO that never seem to show up in HD, even after I send it to reporting. Then I download the data set from ETO and manually upload it to HD, but that doesn't always work perfectly either. So there are two different things that potentially could be happening here. When you're doing a data exchange, there's a sender and a receiver. If the receiver never gets the data, meaning it never comes to the secure FTP site for us to process, then it's hard on the receiving end to know where it went wrong. If the data does come in, and we can see that, then we have logging built into the system of what potentially could have caused it to not be ready for reporting. So there's two things. The data management piece will show you the data that you have available that's ready for reporting, as well as the home page. So if you go to a create report and you don't see something in the drop-down, definitely check here first. If you have an export ID from your source system and you want to open up a ticket, we will gladly open a joint ticket with your source HMI vendor to troubleshoot and figure out where the disconnect might have happened. If there's a manual upload and you're trying to upload it, there are some things to be aware of that kind of come up on the logs. For example, there is a project entry ID that Heidi's showing right now that's a duplicate ID. So HUD CSV format, there's basic rules that we need to adhere to for proper relational database structure. And one of those is that some IDs need to be completely unique. Otherwise, you might be joining to the wrong record in a table structure. So if that happens, unfortunately, we need the data to be cut again, to recut. Now, with your vendor, I know that there's some guidance on how to prevent this from happening. And there might be other flags, but what I would strongly encourage, if you have something that doesn't load, go to that validation tab and look for red exclamation points. That's a quick way to go through and figure out what's going wrong. Larger data sets tend to have more chance for error than smaller ones, just because there's more permutations that potentially could happen. But we will gladly work through any data upload issue with you and or with your vendor.
So I'll just tell you real quick, we do have a help desk section there, and you can go ahead and open a new ticket anytime.
Sure, and that's a good point there, and also quick email to helpdesk@simtechsolutions.com. So if you do submit a help desk ticket, it is really helpful if you provide details along with that ticket. It's going to make it so much quicker for us to get a response back to you. So, for example, if you're having an issue with a data export, let us know what the export ID is. Let us know when you ran it. If it's something that you're aware of is happening, let us know where it seems to be hanging out. Otherwise, we're going to start the troubleshooting from a little bit further back. It's going to take a little while longer. So, the more information you can provide us, the quicker we can respond to you. And please don't contact any of us directly. Really use the help desk because we work as a team. We triage corporate tickets as well, if emailing us individually. Some of us do go on vacation from time to time. Some of us do get sick from time to time. We have other, responsibilities that we take care of, but there's always someone managing the help desk. So, again, please use that help desk at simtechsolutions.com address for any support requests, and we'll get to you as soon as we can.
All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, just one thing, piggyback on what you just said about exports not showing up. I found, too, that if you mistakenly put in the wrong version, it'll pull it to HC- instead of HomelessData, so it will never show up.
That's a good point, Mark.
04 or something like that.
Thanks for catching that. Yeah, because 5.1, ICSV 5.1 goes to HomelessData. Anything other than, I think this is 4.1, will go to HC-. Good news is we are looking forward to being able to decommission the reporting in Agency- and have all of the reports generated out of HomelessData in very short order. And we'll be talking about the APR changes coming further down the agenda.
Hey, Matt, but my question is for gaps. If you have a gap and it's only like in one program, is it best just to, can you just do a data set that includes, a couple days before the gap, a couple days after the gap, so you have the whole thing, if it's just one program, or should you go?
That's all you need. That's all you need, and just do the programs that have a gap. Don't worry about the others. Right,
and just the day before, 2 days before, and 2 days after.
As long as it's covering that period, you're
okay.
Good. Good question.
All right. So on that, I think this is a good moment to, right now, basically with reports, people probably do these. You can run your reports, and right now you have to select your organization and your project, and both for all of the reports you have to do that. Well, soon to come is going to be the ability to run a report over a particular data source or over a particular data import. This has been a request because people miss that feature, and there's also a lot of advantages if you are trying to run a report over a particular group of programs or a subset of programs, and if you have to run multiple reports over the same group, then this will be a nice shortcut and workaround. So I don't know if Matan, I was just going to, this was getting to your question, Matan. Good, I'll take that as a yes. So, yes, it's very nice. It'll be nice for all of us.
And to the point of deleted enrollments, that other issue, if your vendor has issues populating the date deleted flag in the HUD CSV exchange format, which makes it hard for us to figure out if an enrollment was deleted, this is also being put in place to address that. Because if you were to have a fresh data set for a report and load it in, while the data is still getting written to a relational database and we have a comprehensive picture, it's only going to pick the records from the enrollments that exist in the data set that you just uploaded. So if something was deleted, it will no longer pick that up. So it's technically a workaround to the ideal solution, which is to have the source vendor use that date deleted flag. But we're trying to be accommodating and make it easy for everyone. So that this feature has a couple other benefits. And later on, you can talk about feature enhancements and requests. Also think about putting views into the data right in HomelessData. So if you have a particular group, that might be cool to have. As far as I need to do something for these 6 projects that are all focused on young adults, for example. If we had a ability to subset the view, we could add that also into here. But for now, this is a way to get towards that goal.
Okay.
Okay. So just a couple of quick things. The housing inventory chart and the PIT are both due HDX by May 1st. We know that that's a responsibility of the regions, but we also know that a lot of that data quality review has been pushed down to the organizations to make sure that everything is correct.
I have all the comments, and I was going to follow up.
People have seen these reports. This is what the point-in-time report looks like.
We're definitely going to get back to you all and see.
I'm going to go ahead and mute, which is unfortunately is going to mute Matt also, but I hear some background noise. So.
Yeah,
okay? Can you guys still hear me though?
Yeah, I can hear you, Heidi.
Okay, cool. So that's the point-in-time report, and the housing inventory chart looks, similar. So the HICS, the housing inventory charts, can be completed if you're using HMIS for all of the project descriptor elements. You can generate your HIC with one click. And again, assuming if you are given, either you would have to manually select everything, or if you, like Mark, you should have access to everything in your region. So if everything is up to date, your HIC report should run over everything you have access to.
So yeah, just leave the Oregon project blank in the selection.
Yeah. It's funny, Matt, I could hear you, so I don't know. I thought you were muted.
Well, I think it's good I'm calling up the same line.
Okay. So, right, you could otherwise you'll pick your organizations and projects from that drop-down menu.
And on the far right, too, I think it's good to point out that the housing inventory chart does have the number of people that were served on the night of the point-in-time count on the far right of the housing inventory chart. So use that as a quick gut check of the data. If you're an administrator. It does include the bed counts for permanent housing projects, whereas you're not going to get that on the point-in-time report for permanent projects. The point-in-time report is only for emergency and transitional. But if you want to know the counts for your permanents, it'll be right there on the right. And there is a drill-down ability, but let's not click on that.
I'm not going to. Right, so the PIT report is only for people who are homeless. People who are in permanent housing are not considered homeless. And the housing inventory chart is supposed to be over everything in your region that's designated for people who are homeless or formerly homeless, regardless of the funding. So people have questions about that and what should go on or shouldn't go on. Probably more of a question for your HUD rep, but we can try to help sort that out as well. Okay, system performance measures. We have guidance from HUD that you can resubmit your SPMs. HDX is from the ones that you submitted in the fall. The date range was 10/1/14 to 9/30/15. HDX will be open again on April 3rd, and submissions are due by May 31st for those. Okay, so the APR is going to look a lot like the APR that's due in ready to roll out. We have it here. It is due from HUD to HUD next week or in 10 days on April 1st. we are going to have the same output that we've had. Here are some changes. I'm going to walk through it pretty fast. So again, this is over kind of test data. I'll tell you that question 29A from the old APR, which was these questions, 29A was around performance, housing stability, and income questions, the actual persons, and then the percentage. I'm sorry. These are the actual persons who were served, and then the number of people who accomplished the measure. So this question is gone, 29 from the APR, but you're gonna see where there are opportunities to capture similar information in the new APR if people were relying on that question. But we did also submit a question to AAQ today around how organizations should use the new APR if they were relying on 29 from the previous one. So one of the first things you're going to notice with the new APR is big changes to the whole data quality section. So 6A through F have been added, and that replaces the old 5A. So it breaks it down into different sections. You've got these real demographics, and they're also applying scores now. These are non-demographics, but they are also they are part of the universal data elements. And then what we get into is some of what used to be the program elements. Things like destination is such a critical data element, and it informs so many of the system performance measures, and it's so important as you're looking at your own project performance. We're trying to end homelessness. Where people go when they leave a project is probably, in some ways the most important question we can be asking. So again, just going through this, all these data quality sections, data quality on chronic homeless, data quality on timeliness, inactive records, so quite extensive that they want us to be working on data quality. And then it gets into, I'm just going to kind of cruise through these questions. Some of the questions are the same questions, but they've been renumbered. Not going to go through the details of that. You can do the comparisons. Many of these are quite the same. Scroll through to look pretty familiar. And then when we get to questions 19, there's some differences there too. We're going to show you the APR data extrapolation and how this gets into Sage in just a minute. But this is the actual output. So 19A, 1A, 2, and A3, we think that these questions now effectively replaces the income portion of the performance measures from 29, because you've got entry and latest status, entry and exit, and then entry, exit, latest status. So that performance was looking at earned income and any income. And it's looking at the number of people, the total adults, and then the performance who actually, number who accomplished the measure. Okay. Destinations.
So in reality, those questions didn't really disappear. They've been moved back to go along with where the other information is collected. So if you're used to using those in Q29, just look for them in the questions that are relevant to Q2, that were relevant for that.
The other The others in these exit destination questions, more than 90 days and less than 90 days, the 23A and 23B, there are now these totals and percentages. Total persons exiting to a positive destination, and then total persons whose destination excluded them from the calculation. So a lot of the system performance measures and a lot of what I know organizations are focusing on, whether it's within your organization and you're looking at outcomes, or whether it's in a COC and you're looking at outcomes because you're comparing one project to another, this would be what you're going to look at, the exits to a positive destination. So there's the rest of the APR that kind of goes through all that. And it should look very familiar. It's going to show what it's going to look like in HD is going to be really similar when you run a CAPER report right now in HomelessData. Just going to show you have this opportunity to download the CSV files. That's what we're going to have in for the APR as well, and that's going to be your CSV packet. And if you open that, you'll see this is what the output looks like. It's basically, it takes all those buckets, but then it sorts it by question without client identifying information. And then what you'll do is you're going to open Sage, and you're going to choose your file here, and you're going to upload your zip. You don't have to unzip and rezip. You're just going to choose that file from wherever you downloaded it to and upload and test. And you can do this. This is demo.sage.hmis.info.
So for any of you that used to have to plug in all the API results for every project in your region or for your organization, this should save you hours and hours of your lives. That's the good news.
Yeah. And you can upload, right? You can upload if you have multiple sort of sub-projects for one project. Is that right? And we'll add them together?
Yes. Yes, we did find out that you can do multiple submissions for a project with sub-projects. So we asked that, and that came up from a client, and we asked in the last HMIS vendor call if that was going to be a possibility, and they said it was.
So I'm going to open it up to questions, but one of the questions that we have for all of you is whether or not we should go ahead and post this APR live or do some more testing on it. There was just a question about program groups, and if we're going to be doing program groups, which I know is a way that ETO bunches programs together. Matt, do you want to address that?
So as far as running, there's different kinds of setups that different vendors have and different organizations have. If you have a APR that's where you have multiple subgrantees and they're not all together, what Sage is allowing you to do is run an APR for each of these and submit the APR results one at a time, and then at the end press submit and have all, say it's 5 subgrantees, you'll run 5 APRs, upload the results, and you'll have 5 different sets of output for these. So that's part of the answer. So Sage is allowing for that. So I think that's really the program group, what they're looking to accomplish with that function. And as far as selecting multiple projects when you run an APR, you should be able to do that as well. So if that's what you mean by running a program group, you can do that too. And then once the new filter function's in place, if you were to export data for a group of projects and then use that filter, you can just select everything in that data set for that filter data set and run it over that to create one APR off of that.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute now in general in case people have other.
I have a question. I have my understanding is you have to, like Matt said, will give you 5 different APRs. What if you have a program where they're merged together, but they're merged together in one APR? Would I run that as a program group and then upload the CSV like that?
So when you say they're merged together, you're saying is it one grantee and 5 sub-grantees, Deb?
No, it's one grantee, but okay, what happened is they had say they had a rapid rehousing program.
Okay.
And then they came back with another rapid rehousing program. But when they run their API, it's a program group with rapid rehousing 1 and rapid rehousing 2. So when I would do the APIs then, I would just run the program group, and then I would use that data for the APR.
Okay. There are some considerations to be made in the sense that where it gets tricky is if the same client was served by rapid rehousing 1 and rapid rehousing 2.
It wouldn't be the same client. It wouldn't be the same client.
All right, so then then it's clean.
Then it's clean.
If you were to report over multiple projects, they're really only one project. The way the APR logic works is it's looking at the most recent enrollment. So if a client was served in in your system set up as 2 different projects, but it's really one, you're going to get the most recent enrollment for project 1, recent enrollment for project 2, thereby counting that person in both.
Yeah. No. If they're in rapid rehousing, then they cannot be serviced in rapid rehousing 2.
Okay, that's nice and clean.
So it's clean. So there shouldn't be no problem with that.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm so tired of this. I'm sorry.
Consistence between one program and another, Matan is saying.
Yeah, so, Matan, I'm not sure if you're referring to my point about, if someone was served in Project 1 and in Project 2, the same person, then that's where the project setup may need to be rethought because they're really not 2 different projects. It's really one project. And so, it's one of those things that would be nice if HUD gave more guidance on this piece for everyone, from the vendors down to the end users. Maybe the idea of a sub-project could come into play. I know there is some conversations about changes to data standards to allow for understanding for someone before they move into permanent housing and then afterwards. So particularly related to the move-in date for rapid rehousing. And so we're expecting that guidance in the next couple of months, hopefully, which might sort some of this out for those projects where they are right now being set as 2 projects. But that's a known issue on the HUD side of things, and we're just waiting for guidance. And we're actually members of the talk that through with them.
Do you not have voice? Guess not. All I saw was that would be amazing.
Oh, I see. I think maybe your screen's cut off. But he's saying that, Matan's saying that we need to set up a number of housing search programs for that reason.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So HUD's aware of it. It's a national issue that people are trying to get around. So, it may very well
issue with the system performance measures.
All right, what's that?
It's Mark Cape Cod. Would you run the same issue with the system performance measures because people could be served in different projects?
Well, system performance measures ideally are going to be looking at project type. So as long as HUD provides guidance on what project types to include, if you're still on housing search, that's still, to my eyes, a services project. Whereas when you're actually in a residential project, that's a change. So if the SPM, the Assistant Performance Measures, ignore the services projects, which they do now, then it's kind of taken care of for you. But when they're treated as both residential projects, then that could make the length of time in those residential projects seem longer than it really is.
I think I was thinking more of like the emergency shelter, like you have two emergency shelters and somebody's moved around between the shelters.
No, those will be fine. Those will be fine. So the only thing about to be cognizant of is HUD System Performance Measure 1 does look at the person's self-reported information on the time they became homeless, and that relying on self-reported information can cause errors. So it's just something to be aware of, that there may be issues in that, and something to review.
There was a question about getting data over if you're an ETO user. The people who are using ETO should be sending it automatically from ETO to the reporting site, and I believe the link is going to be updated so that 5.1 data now does not only get sent to HD, but then you get the link brings you over directly to HomelessData. Did that answer?
Okay, I'm sorry, Heidi. This is Deborah. I didn't quite get all what you were saying.
Was that you that the question
I think I know the answer.
identified? So from
I take
ETO getting data over from ETO into HomelessData, that should be from the ETO screen on how to pulling a data set and sending it to a reporting site.
Yeah, but Heidi, I don't think that's what they're asking.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
clarify real quickly, because it says the questions. I think it's related to the idea, the confusion about CSV. CSV is an exchange format. So the question is, if we use ETO, do we download CSV and upload into HomelessData, and then download the CSV again from HomelessData and upload to Sage? So the important distinction is there's different types of CSV. There's the HUD CSV data exchange format, which is how the client level information that the reports get created off of. And then there's the APR CSV. And all CSV stands for, it's comma separated variable format. So it's a mechanism for exchanging data. So you've got an APR CSV, and you've got the HUD HMIS CSV. We work with HUD HMIS CSV to take data from a vendor, whatever vendor it might be, and we can produce the APR and CAPR CSV. So the CAPR has one as well. The CAPR goes to the chart tool. The APR CSV will go into Sage. So, and to Heidi's point, for those ETO users, yes, there will be, the center reporting site will now go over to HomelessData. I think the question was really more on the CSV, where that goes.
Okay.
Different kind of CSV.
Yeah.
So, Heidi, can you show where that create CSV part is on the APR? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We have this live right now for a CAPR. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it.
No, it's not on APRs, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
CAPR.
you will see it eventually for the APRs. For now, you'll see it just for the CAPRs, but come April 1, we'll have it for the download CSV icon, which is down there.
See it right there?
So
you're going to run your APR just like you always have. And you can look at it, you can evaluate it, does it make sense, is the data just the way you want it? You're going to work with it exactly the way you always have. And then at the end, when you've got that final one that you know is just right, you're going to run that, and then you're going to download your CSV files. It's going to be just like this. And you can, now it's in my downloads, but you can also store it somewhere on your computer. It does not have client-level data in it. And then when you go to Sage, go here, and you go to choose your file. Now I would go to my downloads, and I can upload it in. This is a CAPR package. But that's, That's the method. So.
Yep, same format. So one of the open questions we have while we have everyone on the line, does anyone have any hesitation for us moving live with the new APR now? We didn't go live with it because we knew question 29 was coming off, and some people are using the current APR. But we do have it available to be launched in production. Some people might want to get a sneak peek at it and mess around with it.
I would love to.
Tires, if you will. If there's anything that you find, we have done our own internal testing, but if you have anything to find, will give us more of a window to address things. But we wanted to put it back out to the user community. Does anyone have any objections to us going live with it now? And if so, please let us know.
When you say going live, we can go in there and test the data out, right?
Yeah, you're able to use the new version of the API.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm for that.
Anyone else? Anyone have any issues with us going live? Once we go live with the new one, you're still going to be running APRs out of Agency Dash until the end of March. So, because it's still the eSnaps version until then. But for now, any APRs you want to run, if you want to run them, you can do it right out of HomelessData, and it'll be the newest of the new.
So, Matt, this is Kaja Adderley from the City of Boston. So once we go live April 1st, we won't be able to use that old format because we have some providers that are they owe us APRs for FY 13 and 14.
Okay, it would still be in the Agency Dash format. So Agency Dash will keep that up and running for the transition period. So if they don't make the cutoff and it's April 15th, we'll leave that running for a little while.
Okay.
And the HUD also still has the generation tool to do APRs if you want to really cut ties of it.
Am I not correct in thinking that when I was in that webinar with HUD, they were saying if we did not have all the old APRs in by the end of this month, any APR going in has to go in through Sage?
Well, any APR, it sounded like they said FY 15 and above. But anything beyond that, it will still be open for them to submit. Now, I probably should ask a question about that, but we were going to try to get them in by April 1st, but it's our Shelter Plus Care program, so I just wanted to ask the question prior to April 1st.
So, sorry, I was responding to the other question at the same time. Any of those older APRs, those are still the ones that go to eSnaps for the older ones, and those are done through Agency Dash still.
Right.
So we'll leave that up for a while, and we won't cut ties with letting people know. But we'd recommend anyone, if you have old APRs that are due, work with us and let us know if we can help out. Let's try to get them submitted. Because there might be a point where they stop accepting them through eSnaps.
Okay, Matt, just one last question. In Agency Dash, they run reports for 5.1 CSV files?
No, that's actually over 4.1, I believe.
Okay, all right.
3.04, is it?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Yeah, 3.04.
Thank you.
And now I'm seeing the chat as well. So there's a question, if we need to correct information, do we fix it? Oh, Matt's responding. And then download and upload again. Yes. Any corrected services will rewrite to the database.
So, and you'll notice the data as of in the report header. So, the one that's up right now, it says March 2nd, 2017. So, if you've done recent data updates, just take a look at that data as of date. And if it's old, then you need to refresh your data set.
So, man, I have another question about the formatting for the COC code.
Sure.
There's various styles, like sometimes it's capital letters, sometimes there's no dash, and I'm just wondering what would flag it to be an error.
you know, I don't know if anything gets flagged as an error. The ideal format is capitals, all caps with a dash between the spaces.
Yeah, I know, but when we first started that process, there wasn't any way to well, anyway, it just, there's a lot of variations.
Yeah, actually, Mark, I can answer that.
It's not a well-structured field at all. It's one of the ones we've definitely have issues with. I think, you know, SSDF repository might have different issues, like, you know, error handling than what we might have. I don't recall if we have any particular error handling other than it needs to be within a set field length.
No, Matt, it will, in the new APR, there's a specific thing for data errors.
Okay.
So if it doesn't match the format letter dash 3 numbers, it will be counted as an error.
So it'll be counted as an error, but we still take the import.
We'll take it, yeah, but I was just like, I think if Mark might have been asking, the new APR does call that out and will count against your data quality.
Okay, yeah. So
we'll take it, but it will show up as that, you know, client has a data error for that field, which is client location.
So that's something I'd bring to our vendors' attention, see if they can do like a script file, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Q6B, the universal data elements. And there's also, I saw a question about social security number and how that gets counted, because I think it was related to newborns not having one, and you're putting in data not collected, so that will show up and that will count against it will increase that percentage of errors for the social security number. Yeah, I think that, I don't know whether or not HUD will understand that and know if it's a project with a large number of newborns, be a little bit more lenient for how they look at the data percentage for that, but they will be counted under the data not collected.
So you're saying if it's blank and you just say, like, what if you say it's used or don't know, something like that?
Yeah, so for that question, it's Q6A. There's three columns: client doesn't know or refused, data not collected, or data issues. And so, you know, if the data not collected, if it's blank, it would be in the data not collected field or column. But then there's also a percent error rate, and they'll count towards that percent error rate. It hasn't really, that I've seen, published any like guidance about what percentages they're looking for on these. And I think usually we go with 10%, but I don't know if there's anything official about that, and whether or not that would be different for different scenarios like this. Because yeah, if a newborn doesn't have a social security number, that's not really poor data quality. That's just reality.
Yeah.
And similarly, just because these are the times, you know, other people who may not have social security numbers, and I think it's just something to be sensitive to right now. And I wouldn't push it. Any other questions? We're just over an hour or so. I think it's been a really rich conversation. I hope that everyone's gotten a lot out of it. But if there are one or two final questions, we can take them. Otherwise, you know, we do really appreciate feedback, input on things that, new features that we can use. We keep an ongoing list. We've gotten some really great feedback. We want this system to work best for you. And the way we know that is if we hear from you.
Hey, yeah, I have one question for you. Veterans Northeast, SSVF data through Service Point. Do you have that in HomelessData?
Mark, we don't have it for, we can get Service Point data, but that's outside right now of the scope of what we're doing with Cape Cod. So we can work with other data sources for regions that we're working directly with and bring that in. We can certainly do that and work with you on it, but that would be out of scope right now.
But any of those particular region-specific questions, if you want to follow up, we can have offline conversations about those.
Absolutely.
But, in general, thank you, everyone, for your time. Again, the one thing I wanted to follow up with, suggestions, feedback, we definitely appreciate that. Helpdesk@simtechsolutions.com is probably the best address for that. We have received some good ones over the last few weeks, and, we continue to want to refine this work. So thanks for your constant feedback with us with HUD.
All right, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
All right, take care.